Greetings, traveler. I know it may be tempting not to heed warnings telling you to turn back now, but this one you might want to pay attention to if you're sensitive towards sexual content or foul language in a podcast. We will be swearing during this episode, and we will be talking about some not so PG 13 things. So, this is your one and only chance to turn back now. Please enjoy the show.
God, I hate it.
That's gonna be the beginning of every single episode, is just producer going, God dang it.
One of these days, we're gonna have to when we have programmers, we're gonna have to get someone to develop a software that just gets rid of her voice.
Please.
And then one day we're just gonna start recording without her saying something, and producer's gonna say something that we're not allowed to air.
Yeah, like 1975.
Oh, God.
What's so special about 1975?
Oh, you know exactly what's so
Well,
special
that was
about
when
1975.
the Tomato Festival was.
Yeah. And supposedly a magic incursion.
And also a Led Zeppelin concert.
I thought you were doing like a reference to like Jay Schlatt, how he has that joke about how he like murdered 3 women in 1999. I thought it was something similar to that. But we're talking about the old D&D campaign.
Yes, we are.
The first one? Was that
that was well, okay, that was the first one that we actually named. There was one before, but I don't think all of us were in it. I think that might have just been a
Well, I remember that when I played D&D for the first time, because I was a young strapping lad in my junior year of high school, and I was like, oh man, I really like fantasy. I really like stuff like that. I want to play D&D. Who do I know that knows D&D? And the only person I knew that knew D&D was one of my friend's parents. And one day when we were all at their house for some party or something, it was a holiday get together. A bunch of us kids managed to convince this parent to be the DM for us. And it was like at 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And we went up and had like a 3-hour one-off adventure. And it wasn't done right because the parent didn't want to fool with teaching all of us the actual rules. So it wasn't done completely right, but it was fun. And it was a good introduction for me. But also then the one after that came after that, the next one for me was 1975. That was the first one. That was the first one that was named.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the precipice of our ability to play D&D right there. It's been downhill since.
That was the first lawless D&D.
That was my foray into DMing because the original DM didn't DM it anymore.
And that was my best character to date.
That was my best character to date. She just didn't talk.
Mine was named Nikolai, and he was a Soviet-Russian spy, but he had a crush on your character, Levi, and that was his Zenobia. That was his thing.
I don't even remember Zenovia's. There was something about she was born and raised in like the U.S. South, and her parents were like horrible people. So she ran away, and eventually ended up at where did it start? What city did it start in?
I don't remember. All I know is we were at a Led Zeppelin concert, and I think my character was a roadie for Led Zeppelin. It might have been LA. I don't remember.
It was in 1975. We were at a Led Zeppelin concert.
Oh, I don't think they invented LA yet.
Some weird guy walked onto the stage. He was like drunk. He fell over and died in the audience in front of all of us. Everyone freaked out.
I can't believe you remember this. I have no recollection.
And then that guy like gets dragged away or something, and we all get out of there. No, the DM at the time, who was not me, for all you audio listeners, love you to death, didn't give us any hook for anything.
Well, to be fair, he was pulling this out of his ass.
True, but we all kind of just existed in each other's space. So we all ended up just hanging out together.
I committed a breaking and entering.
And at some point we went back to a university. That's what it was. My character didn't run away from home. They went to university really far away from home because it was like my dorm room or something.
Yeah.
And we all went back there to go like spend the night. And then in the middle of the night, happened to be when the DM had to stop DMing. I took over. I was like, I'm going to do it, guys. I'm going to DM. And I had this masterful story in my head which was the plot of this random campaign we had just created out of nowhere, which was set in our world, the real world, was that get this, you'll never guess how I changed it up. Magic is real.
Ooh.
Magic is real and in our world.
Groundbreaking.
And all those stories from the past, the legends, I mean, they're actually real stories that actually happened, and we just think they're fake. And that drunk guy that got on the Led Zeppelin concert stage is like some weird wizard dude who's trying to live forever, and he's being hunted by the Wizard Inquisition because he's a bad dude. But we didn't know that, and he was getting us to help him, and in exchange, he would teach us some magic stuff. And we had a revolving door cast come in and out of this campaign that went on for like 7. We actually had a couple sessions of this. We didn't have very much, but we had like 3.
That was the beginning of Discord D&D, because we used to do that. Yeah,
we had like 3 sessions of it, I think, or 4 maybe, which consisted of our characters going on a road trip to wherever the heck this guy needed us to take him, which was like across the country. So it was going to be like a cross country campaign thing where we were going to go and he was going to teach us stuff along the way, and we were going to be on the run. And the final session, we ended up in some town in like Arizona where they were having a tomato festival, and it was right like we ended right before a combat, I think, with the magical Inquisition, who all looked like members of the clan, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So
well, that's all very cool and stuff, but like this was also the same campaign where main character whole goal, and they achieved it, was to become a Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just explaining the premise. I wasn't saying that it was good.
Oh, but no, that was the main point, was Jamie Smith. And also, okay, we should explain, Jamie Smithy was named Jamie Smithy because the person that was playing this character was originally named James Smith, and was like, well, you know what, actually, I think I want to play a girl, so but I like the name, so I'm going to keep the name. Well, I could just go by Jamie, and then he decides, you know what, no, I'm going to go by Jamie Smithy and put it, because that's how names work.
And then
they
became an actual Zeppelin made out of lead.
Yeah, that was the goal.
If I remember correctly, the DM at the time, who was not me, we had been doing like a swapping out of who was DM, was like, yeah, no, you're just a Led Zeppelin now. You can't do anything. You are an inanimate object. And so that was it. That was the game over for them.
And we won. It was just that easy. Zenobia!
Yep. I guess the first of the many Levi and Pertuzit in-game romances.
True.
Right.
It's odd that there. If I had a nickel for every time there was an in-game Pertuzit and Levi romance, I'd have like 3 nickels. 3 nickels, I think.
I can almost buy you a soda pop, dude.
Which isn't a lot, but it's kind of weird that there's 3.
Well, to be fair, you guys are the only ones that are like not
comfortable
too
enough.
Awkward. Yeah, because it's like Taren. Oh dear God, I can only imagine how. Well, I mean, to be fair, he did kind of try in Vivia too, and it didn't go very well. And then I've never had a character that would make sense for, so I've never done it. And then TJ is TJ, so.
Yeah, TJ is TJ.
TJ's idea of romance is I roll the persuasion check. Do I bang now? We bang, okay?
Well, that's how we're going to talk about how we all started with D&D.
Yeah, that's the topic for this episode, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
That's the topic. We kind of just went on a roll there. That was just for the opening, and we just kept going.
Editing Pertuzit, tell editing Jordan to edit here.
What's an editing Pertuzit?
I just kept going, actually. That was a lot from me. So I think I'll give the hot seat over to YouTube.
An editing Pertuzit is the guy that sits back with his arms behind his head and his legs kicked up and says, work harder. No, I'm kidding. No.
Gee, thanks.
That's my bosses at my actual workplace. We gotta wait for him to get back, but I was gonna do our actual normal, and this is the Nat One Podcast. Nope, don't listen. We don't say words that are good in things. I watched It's Always Sunny 15, by the way.
You're finally caught up because I won.
Yes.
I watched the entire thing.
Well, I turned into a Led Zeppelin, so I mean, like,
well,
who really won? I just realized I can get the spell polymorph in Vivia 3.
You can.
I am a Warforged.
Mm-hmm.
So while I
Oh
can't
my
become
God.
a lead zeppelin, I can become a brass zeppelin.
Zeppelin. I mean, you're technically not wrong. You are technically correct, which is the best kind of correct, according to TJ.
I'm gonna win.
Yeah,
Again.
that's how that works.
Even
and
though
then in Vivia 3, I can get the spell. Yep, that's the joke.
You can get the spelling bee award.
That's true, because
this
character can actually read this time.
Okay, now that you're back, we're gonna do our thing. Welcome to the Nat One Podcast, aka Nope, because nope, you're not gonna want to hear what we're about to have to say. I'm Produce It.
I'm Levi.
I'm Jordan.
Well, guys, we've had a couple episodes by now.
Mm-hmm.
We got a couple in the bank.
Yeah.
And we've talked about quite a variety of things already.
Yeah.
But I think
Get
it's
back to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, we need to talk about some D&D, but more importantly, I think we need to talk about our history with D&D.
Yeah. So
that the people listening at home understand how absolutely messed up our perception of the game is.
We fixed it for the most part.
We did.
Oh goodness, those beginning years.
The beginning.
But before even diving into how we began with D&D, the first thing you need for D&D is you need people to play it. So
yeah.
How did we meet each other? I know how I met you guys. You guys know how you met each other and me.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever heard it from your perspective, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna trade it off. Let's go with Jordan. How'd you meet us?
So I met at a board game convention.
True.
Because you used to tag along with a mutual family friend of ours, and like that happened for a couple years where we would just like see each other at things in passing. And we didn't really become friends until I moved schools.
Mm-hmm. I forget. It's that meme, Umbrella Academy.
The cars.
The cars.
But yeah, because you were at Origins and had tagged along with the said family friend. And then we hung out. You had entered a cosplay competition for that, hadn't you?
Yeah.
And you had some kind of prop or something and had entered a competition. And then we all went out to dinner at the Italian restaurant that we like to come to whenever we're in Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that was the first time that I met you. And then I met Levi at band camp. That's
We're a marching band together.
Yup.
What about you, Levi?
Well, let me see if I can remember. Because, man, I mean, I'm trying to think more in depth about how I met Jordan, because I know it was in band camp, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I think band camp might have been the very first thing, though, because...
Wait, no, it was a birthday party.
Was it?
Yes. It was the paintball party.
Oh, that's right. We had a person all three of us know.
Same mutual friend.
Same mutual friend who was having a birthday party at like an outdoor paintball arena. And I went. At the time, I wasn't even very good friends with this mutual friend. I was just more like, there was a larger group of people that was going, and it was like kind of expected that everyone who was in this friend group would show up, and I was part of that. So I went. So yeah, I completely forgot that happened. That is right.
Too.
Yeah.
I don't remember doing it. I don't think I was there.
So that's where I met Jordan, and probably where I met Taren.
Yeah, he was there. Taren actually played, so you probably interacted with Taren more than me that day, because you probably did shoot Taren.
Yo, we have a great reputation with our first greetings with Taren, but we'll get to that in a second.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And my first meeting with Produce It, do you want to count it as like when we first talked, or do you want to count it as like when we first saw each other in the same space?
I don't know, whichever one you think's more relevant.
Because saw each other in the same space, we both went to the same high school, and my freshman year of high school, I was in choir with you. Yeah. So we both were in choir together, and I knew you through that. But I don't think we like interacted much until we were having our theater group at our high school, our old high school.
I remember.
Had a. Wait, what are you thinking of?
I was thinking of the trip to Pennsylvania and the bread.
Yep. Okay. Okay.
That was such a fun trip.
We were putting on a production, and I was one of the minor roles in the production, and so was Produce It. And so the minor roles, the minor talking roles, and the leads of the production were going to a place in Pennsylvania that was putting on the same production, and the student director. We're going to a place in Pennsylvania that was putting on the production so that we could see another school do it and, like get a feel for it and that. So we stop at this Panera Bread along the way there. And, I'm eating. I got some like chicken noodle soup or something from this Panera Bread. It was pretty good. And I'm sitting there by myself because, I don't really know anyone. I'm a freshman in high school at this point. And all these people that got roles other than me are they're like juniors and seniors. So I'm like, oh man, I don't know how to talk to these people. And then this man sits down across from me with a hefty baguette. And he looks at me and he says, "Hey Levi, you know what this is?" And I say, it's bread. And he says, "It's tough bread."
Squeeze bread.
And he says, "Tough bread for tough boys," and takes a massive bite out of the top of this baguette. That was my first interaction with Produce It.
I think I have the picture of you eating
bread.
that. There's a picture of
like
you eating
monster.
that. We should post that on the Twitter. The picture of you eating the whole Panera baguette.
Yeah, there was the tough boy, tough bread incident of, what was that, 2016?
17, I think 16 actually, yeah. One of those.
So yeah.
Oh, gosh.
And then we went on to, that didn't make us like best friends, but it definitely made us more comfortable talking with each other because we went on to do some skits for open mic nights that we had. And
Improved
then
improv.
Much later, as we got really comfortable with each other, we eventually became very good friends as we are now.
Yeah. Oh, man, I'd almost about forgotten about that stuff. That about sums it up, though.
I could never forget tough boy, tough bread.
I see. The thing is like I know that happened. I was there and I did it, but hearing it is like, who is this guy? He's crazy. Like I don't know what went through my mind when it happened. I don't know why I did it. I just know that it happened and I did it. I think it was like my favorite icebreaker because I then later did it to Dylan, like a year later, and we see where that got us.
Now I feel left out. Oh my god.
I'm sorry. I met you too early.
You didn't have your first interaction in a Panera Bread, so it didn't work.
Let's not even talk about how my sophomore year, I didn't meet anybody new, but I had to eat an entire pint of caramel ice cream on the bus, and everybody cheered when I did it and didn't throw up.
I heard about that. I think Layla told me about that.
Oh, I don't even know what's happened to me, but I can't say anything different of how I met you two. So same thing, Jordan and I, we had a mutual family friend where we just kept seeing each other, Umbrella Academy meme, until she moved schools, and then we started talking more because we were in the same group. And the same for Levi. We started talking more because we started hanging out. I do gotta say, the others of our D&D group aren't here, but I do want to mention them, especially because we have an incredibly funny history with Taren.
Taren was the guest in the last episode. If you didn't catch the last episode and want context for how Taren acts, go watch it now.
Now, we'll wait.
We'll be here when you get back. Yeah. Don't worry.
But man, Jordan, how did you meet Taren? This must be a wild story.
I don't know. It was like a really, really long time ago, and all I remember is him screaming constantly. And also taking away all of my parents' attention from me. That is a joke. I very much love Taren is my kid brother, and I love him very dearly. We are very close. Yeah. So Taren and I are siblings. So that's the context.
Levi, what was your first interaction with Taren?
Well, apparently it was paintballing him.
Really, was you shooting him?
I forgot that that paintball thing even happened, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like 99% sure I probably paintballed Taren.
Which is so great because you hurt him physically. I hurt him emotionally when I first met him. So I did spend some time with him before he moved schools, and we were fine. We got along fine. When he moved schools, I ran a club, and he came in one day. He was the youngest of the bunch, and everyone was like, hey, this is Taren. Meet Taren. And they said he has a peanut allergy. That was the first thing someone said to introduce him to me. I looked up from what I was doing. I looked at him. And I said, oh, why was he born wrong? I was joking. I just wanted to break the ice and see like if he would get mad or if that was a funny thing. He left, and now we're good friends.
For context, we are all, Taren is the little brother of the entire group. So we sometimes can be quite mean to Taren, but it's all in good fun and we never actually mean it. And if we go too far, then he usually lets us know.
If anyone outside of our circle is ever mean to him, we hate them.
True, actually.
Yes, that is the rule of thumb. Like, if we're allowed to make fun of Taren and degrade him mentally, but if anybody else does it, dunzo.
We've done some stuff to people that don't like Taren. But that's how I meet Taren. Now, let's just go in chronological order. So next would be TJ.
Yep.
I know TJ. I'll start because I've known him the longest. He was the valedictorian of the class above us, above me and Jordan. And I interacted with him a bunch ever since my 7th grade year, his 8th grade year. I would come into the library almost every day, and I would be like, hey, TJ, you want to know what happened with me on League of Legends last night? And I would tell him every 1 hour a day about League of Legends, and he would then tell me about Lord of the Rings, some Lord of the Rings game. I'm not sure which one.
Online?
No, not online.
Conquest?
Maybe, but I have to ask him about that. That was our whole relationship until high school, and then we started talking about literally anything and everything else, and now we're great friends. But how did you two meet, TJ?
Okay. I want to say, again, same situation with you, where it's like, if we're talking about when we started talking more, it was when you ushered him into the D&D circle, and now he's a member of the D&D circle, and that we're good friends now because of that. But before that, I didn't talk with him regularly, but I knew him because just like you, we were in choir together. And there's one specific incident which will forever leave TJ marked in my memory, which I think I have told you guys about multiple times, which is our choir was doing our yearly good deed, and we were singing for our elementary school counterparts. And I was standing behind TJ with one of my really good friends from high school. We were both standing there. We were both singing the song. And when you're singing, you can't not breathe. You're bringing in air and exhaling air rapidly to make sound. You have to breathe. This man passes the most horrendous gas I have ever had the displeasure of bringing into my body in my life.
He does do that, doesn't he?
He still does it.
And myself and my other friend were like physically recoiling and cringing, but we were at the back so no one could see us. And after we get done with the song, TJ turns around and gives us a look to acknowledge that he knew he did it to us. And then we continued singing. That was my first actual in-depth interaction with TJ, was he skunked me.
The Kubrick stare is a technique in film. That's what I imagine TJ looked like. What about you, Jordan?
I mean, I don't have anything near as dramatic as that, but mine's kind of the same as Levi, but not with the additional parts. No, I was aware of him through choir. I just knew him as the kid that wore the superhero t-shirts. Yeah. And then Pertuzit introduced him to us through D&D. No, I was not gassed by TJ during high school.
Gassed by TJ. That's a tagline or the episode title or something right there. But okay, finally, Dylan. It's Dylan. He's Dylan. He's been in the group. We've all known about Dylan, and he's been talked adjacent to the group. I think more than TJ. but he didn't start playing with us until after TJ.
It was a very strange set of circumstances that got him to play with us, because it was probably me who knew him the least amount of time that brought him into the group. From his own activism, he reached out to me, which I'll explain in a minute.
Yeah, my first interaction with him, my very first interaction with him is he was dating a girl I liked, so I hated his guts. But then after that, we participated in the same extracurriculars, and as I said before, I ate a baguette in front of him, and we became best friends.
Jordan, do you want to go first?
I was just going to say I was vaguely aware of Dylan because he was in the same grade as same mutual family friend as a couple stories ago, and also a grade above my baby brother. So there was a little bit of overlap there, and they did a lot of the same extracurriculars. Words, English, not my forte. So I extra clickety clack. So I had heard of Dylan, but I wasn't extensively familiar with Dylan.
Okay, so for me, I had never even heard of this man. I didn't know he existed. That's not true. I had heard his name in passing, but I had I'd never seen him physically. I didn't know who he was. I hadn't heard him talk before. So one day, speaking of extracurriculars, but my extracurricular actually has nothing to do with him. I didn't meet him through that. One day, this was after we had all been playing D&D together for a while. So D&D's our thing now. We like D&D. D&D's fun. We're known as a D&D friend group. We play D&D together. I was at a rehearsal for a musical doozical that we were doing in high school.
A what?
A musical doozical. Susical. It wasn't Susical, the musical. But I was there doing my thing, we were doing rehearsal. And then after the rehearsal, after my portion of the rehearsal, I didn't have to do anything anymore, as did someone else who was there. And that someone else was because he was younger than me. We were in high school. So he couldn't drive a car, but I could drive a car. And he was like, oh man, I don't have a ride home. Would you be willing to take me home? Long story short, I was like, yeah, sure, why not? Because I'm just nice like that. I'm taking him home, and he's explaining to me when we're going to his house, what's going on. He's like, oh yeah, I got some friends coming over. You know some of them. You know this guy. You know this guy. You know this girl. And we're all going to be playing D&D with this one guy who's being the DM. His name's Dylan. And I was like, I literally know everyone you just said except for this Dylan guy. But I like D&D. I kind of want to stay and watch. Could you ask him if it's okay if I could stay and watch? So he asks Dylan, and Dylan says it's okay. Long story short, I sit in on this small, short session that they have, which was very entertaining. And Dylan was I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, this was his first time DMing. And he did pretty good. I was very interested. And they had some recurring sessions. I asked if I could join and play a little bit because I think we were at a lull of us playing for a while. So I played a couple sessions. Eventually that campaign fell apart, unfortunately. But after having played 6 or 7 sessions together, we knew of each other. I thought that was going to be the end of it, though. A couple months later, we haven't played together in a while or even seen each other. I get a message on my phone, out of the blue. It's Dylan. It says, hey, I know that you and your friends have been doing a D&D campaign. And the one I was DMing fell through a while back, if you remember. And I've been kind of wanting to play some D&D. Would it be okay if I joined your D&D campaign? And this was Dylan and I hadn't spoken one-on-one before this at all. So I was taken aback because also I'm extremely introverted. So I was like, people just do that? They ask people things like this? And so I was like, you know what? Sure. And I immediately made everyone in the circle panic by pressing this button because I had a stint in our first campaign that is very well known in our group of me being like that with pretty much anyone ever that I knew, where I was like, hey, do you guys want to join my D&D campaign? And we had 14 people playing at once at one point.
Best decision ever.
when I did this, we were down to 6 people, and it was kind of I think it was an uh-oh moment, oh no, is he doing it again? But I wasn't doing it again. Dylan I added because I liked him, and I thought he was a pretty good RPer, which is mainly what we focus on when we play. Long story short, good decision.
He persisted.
Now he's a cheese ball can.
He is. Yeah. He's turned into a cheese ball can, much like Jamie Smithy and Led Zeppelin from before.
It's like poetry. It rhymes.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lucas.
It's so crazy that's like a lot of us. We knew each other in high school. We were not great friends in high school, and now D&D has become the great uniter.
Yep.
It's crazy. And of all things, too, that's the thing that we all did. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, I do actually know about you guys, but for the sake of the audience, I have no idea who you are.
I've never met any of you in my entire life. Where am I?
Yeah, time for some storytelling. So, D&D, like, when I was a kid, I had parents, very great parents, very loving parents. They're definitely not on the other side of my door right now. I didn't play D&D. I barely played video games. When I heard and thought about D&D up until I was like 16, I was like, isn't that the like sign away your life nerd kind of thing? Like, you can't come back from nerddom if you do that one.
No, that's World of Warcraft.
See, I thought it was anything that has two of the same letter and a vowel in the middle.
Wow.
Common mistake.
World of Warcraft is WoW, yeah.
Yeah.
Or Magic the Gathering, that's
League
also.
of Legends. Your Honor.
Death.
You know, I didn't know about League of Legends. I did know about League of Legends. I didn't know about Dungeons and Dragons. I didn't know how to play. I didn't know nothing. We had mutual friends and family that had parents that did know how to play, and they taught us. I remember one time I went over for a big party, and we were like, let's play D&D. Let's play D&D. I was like, dude, totally. Yeah, sure. I think that was my sophomore year. So there was like seniors and juniors older than me. And everyone was making their characters. I think we were using like first edition rules or something, or some older edition. Might have just been third.
If it's with who I think you're playing with, then it was definitely AD&D.
Yeah, because we had very limited races and options. And I was like, okay. One person was like, I'm playing this really serious character. I'm playing this like gnome character. And then I was like, so I could be a half orc barbarian and call myself Shrek. And they were like, yeah. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And they were like, you should do it, because they were seniors and juniors. And they're like, that'd be funny. And I was like, okay, guys, I guess I'll do it. And then immediately the person that was DMing us, which was one of our friends' parents, was like, okay, you go into a forest and we'll get back to you later. The party continued, and then I came back hours later, and they're like, I don't know, we stopped playing. I guess you like died and got eaten by a bear or something. So that was my first experience with D&D. Not a good one. But things changed, which I can get back to later, but I'm going to pass the baton, so to speak. I think you have a very interesting one to share, Jordan, especially because of our age. Why don't you tell the lovely people at home how you got into D&D?
Oh, goodness. We're going to be here for a hot second. So my father is a massive, massive nerd. And he passed on that lovely attribute to both of his children, me and my brother. So whenever you come to my home and go down into our basement, which has now become our game room, the first thing that you will see is a giant wall of board games. So I have been playing tabletop games and TTRPGs since I could read, but I never actually played in a real D&D campaign until we started playing together, because my dad had a regular gaming group that he would play with all the time. They would play like weekly. Whenever I was younger, they would have people come over to the house and they would do big dinners and they would play for hours. And that was like a weekly thing whenever I was a kid. And then it slowed down because as you become more adult, then things get less fun. But yeah, yep. I used to watch my dad play D&D for a very long time, and I always saw him playing D&D for my entire life. So I was aware of vaguely how to play D&D. Like I knew the D20 system and I knew how you rolled stats. Everything else, I was fine by this. That's the thing. I tried to teach everybody else how to play D&D, not knowing how to play Dungeons and Dragons. So that went about as well as could be expected. So yeah, this group was the first group that I had actually played like a long-term campaign with a real fleshed out character. I didn't start writing backstories until I started playing with this group, because it was like, oh, why do you have backstories? You're just gonna hit stuff. It was very less role play focused and more, yeah, let's hit the thing.
Yeah.
So it's a different style of
older editions. Very old editions.
My dad has been playing Dungeons and Dragons since like AD&D times. So he's come all the way. He played 4th edition and came out of it on the other side. We have source books for all of the editions of Dungeons and Dragons up to the 5th one. We also have the module for Curse of Strahd and the Firefly TTRPG book. I have Call of Cthulhu, and there's a couple other TTRPG books that we have at home, and I'm blanking on what they are.
You have Traveler?
We have what?
Traveler?
I don't think so. If we do, then that's one that I have not read.
Ooh.
So yes, my father is a massive nerd, and so by proxy, Taren and I are massive nerds.
Isn't that crazy though? Like, our generation is definitely the first generation where the parents were like, yeah, I'm playing D&D. I'm going to teach you, or you're going to learn by osmosis.
Mm-hmm.
That's so crazy that you came out. Like, there's all sorts of stories of like, oh, inheriting the family business. And then there's like the stories where it's like, no, I hate the family business because you forced it upon me. And yet here you are.
I inherited
D&D's
my dad's love of board games. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I think that's incredibly neat because like there's me who's had no idea, had nothing to do about it. And like I said, we'll get back to how I actually did end up getting into it. But I am now huge into D&D from nowhere. And then there's you who's had it your whole life and is still huge into it.
I love board games so much.
D&D
I'm starting
fun.
my own board game cabinet too. That's the thing. Like if I can match my dad's collection by the time I'm his age, it will be an accomplishment. And I plan
Don't
to
match it.
supersede.
Beat
I will
Beat
beat it.
it.
Okay, this man has 8 or 9 versions of Clue and 6 or 7 versions of Monopoly, and we have
Just
played them all.
make sure in the will that you get all of them and Taren gets none of them.
Boom. And
Then
then
you
become the Led
win.
Zeppelin. Yeah. But yeah, that's crazy. Levi, would you like to share?
Oh, well, for me, it's like, it's a different situation to both of you because I'm kind of like a middle ground, I think, where I never thought of D&D as something like nerdy, but it was also kind of just like I never knew it existed for a while. Going to like the parent thing, both my parents in high school were popular kids, so they didn't do nerd stuff. My dad he wasn't like on the football team or anything, but he was like a jock dude that hung out with all the sports players, and he bodybuilt. That's what he did. He bodybuilt in high school and out of high school. And so he was a cool guy. He was a tough guy. And my mom was a popular girl who like went to parties all the time and got drunk all the time and did drugs, not bad drugs, but she did like marijuana. That
Benadryl.
kind.
No.
that kind. She was the popular girl, and like everyone thought she was hot and wanted to get with her and all that stuff. So my parents never did stuff like that. They would have been the people that are in the 80s that they're like, isn't that for nerds? That's what they would have done in the 80s if you mentioned D&D to them. So of course, but that's at the same time, my parents are very loving, and they don't say anything like that to me today. What I'm trying to get at is I never would have gotten exposed to it through them by any means whatsoever, because my parents just they don't do nerd culture. So I think for me, it all begins, and I'm going to try to keep this brief because if I don't, it'll be really long. It all begins when I was about 8 years old at a beach in North Carolina, and my family had rented a condo, and my grandma was with us, but she had a camper. So she didn't stay in the condo. She was in the camper in like in like a RV lot somewhere at the beach. And one night she was like, Levi, do you want to come down to the camper with me? And it can just be like a you and me thing, and I'll make you some food and we'll watch like a movie or something. And I was like, sure. And she puts on VHS tape, because I was young enough at the time that those were still things. This was before 2010. We were still in the very late 2000s. She puts in this VHS tape, and it is I forget the name, but it's the old Hobbit, the one that's a cartoon. And it's got the very well-known art style. I think it's like Rinkenboss or something is what it's called. And that was the beginning, because I watched this and I was like, whoa, dragons, hobbits, dwarves, wizards, this stuff's cool. Fast forward to middle school and I read The Lord of the Rings. And that just tightens it even further. Absolutely love the Lord of the Rings books. Watch the Lord of the Rings movies. Spectacular. Love them. They set my heart alight with a passion for fantasy and fantasy settings. Then I get into high school, and I love going onto YouTube and watching all these videos that are like, here is the lore and the history of the Lord of the Rings world and the Silmarillion and everything that happened in it. And I'm like, man, how did J.R.R. Tolkien just sit down one day and make a world in his head? That seems so cool. I want to try that. That seems like something I want to do because I can just do that. I can make something up and it can be my thing. So I did. I made this world, which originally I called Vivia. It's not technically, the world itself is not called that anymore, but that's what we call all of the D&D campaigns because that was the original name. Funnily enough, I've said this time and time again, just like Tolkien said, he began with a map. I also began with a map. The original map for Vivia has been lost to time. I do not know where it is. I do not know what happened to it, but it's
Rest
gone.
in peace.
So I tried to recreate it in the version I could remember through memory. And that is what we have today, or at least the beginnings of what we have today is the first Vivia map. But this was before it was attached to D&D at all. I had just drew a map, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to make a fantasy world. It's going to be my thing. And so because I had been like looking up on YouTube and on the internet stuff that was like, oh, world building tips and tricks and stuff like that, stuff that was generally the same started getting recommended to me. And eventually, in my recommended feed in YouTube, I started getting clips of the very early Critical Role Vox Machina campaign, the very first one.
Oh.
And I was watching bits of them and I was like, I don't understand how this works at all. But these people are having fun. It looks really complicated though. So I was very put off at first. I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many numbers and things you have to do. I don't get it. And then like 3 months later, after I had drawn this map to completion, the second one, I was like, I think I'm going to try that again. I think I'm going to look into it again. And so I was like, this thing's called Dungeons and Dragons, and it's a TTRPG. What does that even mean? Tabletop RPG. People have been doing this since the 80s? What? How did I not know about this? People do the same thing I'm doing where they make their own world and people play as characters in it? That sounds cool and awesome. I want to do that. I wonder who I'd be able to do that with. So I went and found the nerdiest people I knew.
Well.
And lo and behold, out of like the first 7 people, about 6 or 5 of them, I'm not sure, I'm not doing the exact numbers, were people who are still here now.
Hey.
We've had some people come and go, but the main body has stayed, which is Pertusit and Jordan and Taren and TJ and Dylan, except Dylan was much later. But yeah, that was how it all started for me. It was a very rapid set of events where I was like, I want to make my own world because J.R.R. Tolkien, I think, was cool and awesome, and what he did was cool, and I want to do that. And then I was like, I want to like experience my world now without writing a book. So how do I do that? Here's this thing called D&D. Play it. Okay. We didn't play it right.
Dude, Santa brought it early.
Part of I will attribute part of the reason that we didn't play it correctly as well. Again, I did not know the rules to D&D initially whenever we were starting this, but me and my brother very heavily watched the 1983 Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, which is based off of Dungeons and Dragons, very early Dungeons and Dragons, but it's a fantasy cartoon and therefore has no bearing on any of the rules or the classes that are actually Wizards of the Coast sanctioned classes that are canon to Dungeons and Dragons. So I went in thinking that like Acrobat was a real class and Cavalier, Magician. They changed the names probably for copywriting purposes for the cartoon. And so Taren and I thought those were real classes and not. Some of them are subclasses for actual D&D classes.
Cavalier has survived.
Cavalier is a subclass, but it's not a D&D class.
Yeah.
Fully on its own. And so I was like, I've seen the cartoon and I've heard my dad talk about this. That's good enough.
Yeah. But the honeyed words of fantasy writers was not enough for me to start playing just yet. I had my fantastic experience with Shrek, my first character. Didn't play for a couple of years. Went off to college. We did that RP of 1975 and stuff, and I was like, this is silly as fun. We roll a single D20 to determine stuff sometimes.
With no bonuses whatsoever.
Yeah, no, just roll a D20. I was like, this is silly. It's fun. I like doing a pretend voice and a pretend character. Went off to college, first semester, meet some new people, meet this girl. She's from China. And she's like, hey, you want to hang out and play D&D with me and some of my new friends? And I'm like, sure, I don't care. I had a fun time with this thing called 1975. I'm an expert at D&D.
Oh boy.
I start playing with her in this group. And at the time, it was 2018. So I started watching a new streamer started playing Dark Souls. So I was watching him play it. And he named his character Surso Yeet. So I made my
That's
first
what that's from?
Yes, I named my first character in that Surso Yeet. And I needed D&D Beyond to access all the stuff. So I named my account on D&D Beyond Surso Yeet.
I've always wondered what the fuck that was.
Yeah. Well, I made him in he was a fighter, but he was still unable to read and write.
Hey.
I'm pretty sure we were playing an older edition. She never established exactly the rules when we played, and I think we were also playing a published adventure, but it didn't last longer than 2 sessions because then college friend group drama ensued very quickly.
Ugh.
Yeah, so that all fell apart. But I learned a little bit more. I learned about classes and stuff. So now I've had 2 experiences with D&D, neither of which were good. I had Shrek, I had Surso Yeet. But second semester, spring semester, 2019 rolls around, and I'm talking with people back home. Summer comes around, and I'm like, there's a girl that I like, and she wants to play some kind of D&D thing like 1975, like we used to. So I was like, sure, why not? I could have fun with it. Enter my other best, all my characters are my best characters, but oh gosh, what was his actual name? Jonathan, haha Lord.
Oh my God.
God.
Don't explain it. Just see if people figure it out on their own.
Okay, but
the seizure hat.
Yeah, the seizure hat, but I also need to say he had a nickname. Jonathan, haha Lord's nickname was Stone Sword Hand Fist. I have to at least explain that.
Okay,
and it fits perfectly with the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song.
Yeah. So we did that for a bit, and it was fun. And then Levi was invited to play with us once or twice, and you mentioned you had Vivia, and I was like, okay, let's start doing that. So we started playing Vivia, and I started doing that, and I haven't stopped since because we have a lot of fun, and now we mostly know the rules.
Yep, now we know what we're doing.
Now we actually own source books.
Yeah. So yeah, it took me 3 tries to find Vivia.
But we got there, and now we're here.
Now we're in the middle of Olympus and revving for Vivia 3.
Yeah, now do we explain how we didn't do things right? Is that what we're on now?
No, I think we got to talk about JoJo next. No, no.
No, if you're gonna do you have to do sci-fi before JoJo.
No. There's an entire episode slotted away for that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there's 2 weeks from now.
I'm thinking May the 4th. That's a good time for that one.
Oh yeah, and we can talk about Star Wars too.
Oh yeah, that's crazy. We've had some illustrious beginnings with D&D though, haven't we?
Yeah. I'm honestly, it's one of those things where you're like, man, I'm surprised we made it this far.
True.
So was Dylan. Remember when we told Dylan how we used to play? He's like, how did you guys not rage quit?
Yeah, it's a miracle that we kept playing and got this far, and now we know that we're playing, so we're probably not going to stop now. But there were like so many ways that we could have stopped early and this just not have been a thing. So it's wild to think about that. Just like how we didn't, as we've said multiple times already, how we didn't know rules and we just played by what we knew, which was you roll a d20 for things. We didn't know about proficiency bonuses. When we first started playing, people out there, audio listeners, love you to death, who know about how D&D works, we didn't know what AC was.
No, we didn't.
We did contested d20 rolls for combat.
And for spell save DCs. We didn't do spell save DCs. You had to roll for everything.
Yep, you rolled a d20 for everything. So if someone attacked you, they rolled their roll, and you rolled a dodge or block roll, depending on what kind of class you were pretty much. And you dodged or blocked it if you got better than them. So yeah, we didn't know what AC was. We didn't use proficiency bonuses. We didn't, for a while, we didn't know what spell slots were.
Oh,
yeah.
So we didn't have spell slots. And then the Holy Grail was brought to us. Because I was like, you know what? We just got done with my first campaign. I'm gonna start watching this Critical Role thing. And Critical Role has this longtime sponsor that's very well known if people know about Critical Role, which is the great site D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond is the Holy Grail that saved us.
We're not sponsored.
Yeah, stop talking.
No, I'm just singing its praises.
I know. We're not sponsored though. No, you can, but we're not sponsored.
Because it laid out everything in front of us for us. It showed us what our AC was, what our proficiency bonuses were, how many spell slots we had, how to use spell slots, your specific class ability. It gave us all these things that we were like, we didn't even know these existed.
True.
And it's so neatly put out in front of you that you're like, oh my gosh, I understand the game now. And it gave us the basis we needed to begin playing correctly. And then I spent about $900 on every source book that was available on D&D Beyond as well. So I also bought all of those and read through most of them. There are a couple I haven't touched still, in order to get a grasp on basic rules as well and things like that. And ever since then, we've known generally what we've been doing. But yeah, the beginning was pretty looking back at it now.
We had so much fun though. I think that's the reason that it survived is because that summer we played, like, there was a week that we played like an entire week straight, like 13 hours every day.
If there was, well, I say if there was, there's that stereotype of like the 80s nerds that all they did was play D&D. We fit that first summer that we played D&D.
We truly did. We were playing in a friend's basement for hours and hours a day, only eating pizza and Mountain Dew.
On a fold-out plastic table.
Fold-out plastic table, and yep.
So humble beginnings. It's wild. Like, most of the group stuck together for such a long time, and it's like, we now know we have a lot of common interests. There's a lot that we can talk about, hence this whole dang podcast existing.
Yeah.
But back then, like, the RP things where we just played whatever, we rolled the D20 and said funny words, that was all some of us had. Like, Jordan, I don't think you and I had much conversation before that.
No, because we knew each other through mutual friend and had been interacting at like house parties and stuff like that. That's about it.
And then we started doing the little D&D-esque game, and now here we are. We're talking about sitcoms, satcoms, NFTs, Garfield, everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
Levi and I chatted a bit because he also liked anime, The Great Uniter.
The Great Uniter.
And now you guys have sucked me into that, so
Japan.
A little bit.
But
Japan won the Second World War. You can't change my mind.
Well, D&D at least has now brought us together to keep us together. With the rules or without rules, we're playing it, we're having fun. It's just the power of make-believe.
It is the power of make-believe. That was what got me when I was like, you can just do that?
Yeah.
Just think of something cool and write it on a page, and people are like, the greatest thing I've ever read.
And that's me from the player perspective, is like, you play Skyrim and you're like, what do you mean I can't even try to climb the wall? There's no climb function. You play D&D and you're like, yeah, I'm going to try to shove the frog into his mouth while firing a pistol with my left hand. And then DM's like, okay, acrobatics, I guess, and strength. And you do it or don't.
At disadvantage.
You can do anything you want in D&D.
And it's even better when you fail spectacularly, as Taren has thoroughly explained.
But that's the power of D&D.
It's the power of theater of the mind.
Yeah, and that is why NFTs work and have value, because everyone pretends that they do.
No,
What?
wrong episode. Wrong episode.
Go back.
Sure?
3? Are we on 5 now? Is this 5?
This is...
6?
Yes, this is 5.
5? Go back 3 episodes.
Yes, this
You
is
guys
5.
know how to... Wait, you guys know how to
Or
count?
4 episodes.
I don't know how to count. That's why we like D&D Beyond, because I can't do math.
We've been over this. Your character's the one... Wait, you're over here for me. Your character's the one who's illiterate.
That is true. Arlo is illiterate. She cannot
Then you
read.
pointed at me on my screen.
You also pointed at Bertuzan on my screen as well.
I'm the DM. I'm illiterate. Prove it.
Hi. This is Jordan from Nat One Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode you just listened to, and we hope that you come back for more soon. If you'd like to keep up with the zany shenanigans of our lives and the different things that we do, you can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Spotify, YouTube, Castbox, and Anchor. We look forward to seeing you again soon. And hey, thanks.